Welcome to this video tutorial with Virtual Racing School in the global Mazda MX-5 Cup car on iRacing. This week we return to Summit Point Jefferson circuit, only this time in the arguably even trickier reverse configuration. Before I go into the analysis, I'll play the lap through in full, which as ever is driven in default afternoon weather. Okay, so that was a 54.227. Okay then, so starting on the VRS website, we're going to choose the Mazda MX-5 Cup data pack as driven by myself, and we're going to choose week 10, which is of course Summit Point Jefferson reverse, and this loads up the session details where you can download the lap data, the replay, and the setup is just the iRacing baseline. So I'm going to click on Learn Track, which is going to load up the driving analyzer. It's going to start to play the lap through. Now I've already slowed it down to half speed and muted it, but those of you who might be unfamiliar with what we're seeing, you've got a steering angle input trace, you've got a trace for the speed of the car, both through the duration of the lap, and you've got brake and throttle input traces in red and green respectively, and some live driving inputs as well. So to start off the lap, we'll go to sector 1, which at this circuit is extremely short, so it's literally just the run from the start of the lap to the braking point for turn 1, which is it's just a few meters. So we'll go to sector 2, and the reference here for braking is going to be this green cone here on the left where the pit exit starts. So we'll just play this through. You can see my brake input down here. I'm blipping the throttle as I downshift whilst braking at the same time. I am right foot braking, and I'm using my heel to blip the throttle on the downshift while I do so. So we'll play it through, braking fairly gently, you'll notice, only about 40%, and turning in just before the pit exit finishes there on the left, down into second gear before the apex. Notice how I'm holding the brakes all the way in, gently releasing them as I progressively tighten the car, and I'll just switch to chase view as I pick up the throttle here. And you'll see that all the way around I'm hugging this inside curb as closely as possible. So that's important, that you don't carry too much speed, that you don't brake too late, and you're able to hug this curb all the way around. And I've picked up the throttle midway around, and as I play it through, you'll see the car will just start to run away from that curb again as I reach full throttle. But then as we upshift up into third gear, the circuit will open out a bit more, which will allow us to have a second apex just about there, and that's quite important. It gives us a nice tight exit, which allows us to carry a decent amount of speed towards turn 3. So hugging the left side of the circuit down here, and thinking about your braking points. And I'll just pause that about here. Now it's very difficult to see, but there is a slight kink in the edge of the track here, I'll just go back a tiny bit further to make that clearer. So you see it's nice and straight here, and then there's a slight kink to the left. Now just after that kink is where I'm on the brakes into turn 3. So, and in terms of car positioning, I'm using all of the track, so there's a little bit of extra curbing on the left, which I'm taking advantage of. And again, braking quite gently through here, no more than about 40 or 50% maximum, but you do need to brake for an extended period of time, so you start to turn in shortly after you start braking, but then you maintain that braking all the way into the apex. Now doing that will likely induce a bit of oversteer, so you'll see my steering movements are fairly ragged looking. So basically what I'm doing there is opening the steering and countering any sliding of the car. So if we just play this through, you'll see I turn in there, but then I immediately open up the steering to correct for oversteer, and I do that a few more times until I hook up nicely with the apex. So you'll see there also that I've picked up the throttle just before the apex quite aggressively, and then there's a slight hesitation where I'm modulating the throttle before then finally committing to full throttle just as I leave the apex, hoping that I have enough track available on the exits. Again, correcting twice for some exit oversteer. The car does like to move around a lot on the limit, so it's good to have a nice feel for that and to make a correction nice and early before it gets too out of control, to carry the speed, to maintain the speed. So running the car all the way to the edge of the circuit here on the exit up towards the very tricky turn 4 and then turn 5. Now you see that I've started to turn in here completely flat out, and my turning points, since there's no real reference on the circuit itself, is just after I upshift into 4th gear, assuming that I've had a good exit from turn 3. So turning in completely flat out there, and then and just before apexing I start to have a few lifts off the throttle, just stabilizing the car, trying to avoid oversteer at this point, and then just as I apex, or just before I apex, I start to squeeze the brake. Now on this occasion I probably left my braking a touch too late. It's really important to not be too late on the brakes into this corner, and you'll see why. So I have to increase the brake pressure just here, and that's enough to induce some nasty oversteer. So we've downshifted into 3rd, and there we go. The car's now, as I'm downshifting into 2nd, it's now oversteering quite severely. We've got a severe correction for oversteer there. I say severe, as long as the car isn't sliding too much, you can get away with it, and this actually allows me to get a nice entry and carry a decent amount of entry speed, but you certainly wouldn't want to be braking any later than I'm doing so here. You'll notice there as well that I just breathe into the throttle, and that just unloads the front tyres enough to, together with the opposite lock, to settle the car and return some of the grip to the rear of the car, and just reduce that oversteer. So at this point the car is nice and settled. I brake again gently just to slow the car down that little bit more, to ensure that I can once again, like turn 1, hug the curb on the inside all the way around, which is super important, before then picking up the throttle quite hard just before the curve finishes, and then there's a little bit of a bump as the curve finishes, so just a hesitation on the throttle as well there, in anticipation of the car getting slightly unsettled. As we play it through the left-hander again, you want to hug this curb. You can actually use a little bit of the curb. Just be conscious of, if you do that, that you feather the throttle to keep the car nice and settled through there. So you'll see that my inside wheels are just up on the inside there. and then I reach full throttle briefly before the right-hander, and then again up on the curb, using a lot more of the curb through here. You can get away with it as long as you're off the throttle. Here I'm completely off the throttle as I'm on that curb, which reduces the risk of losing control of the car. Just keeps things nice and settled. So shortly off after that curb, we're on the brakes again for the final corner on the circuit. Down into second gear with a single blip, and we've exited the previous corner roughly in the middle of the track, and we're not braking too late because we don't want to carry too much speed in here, because again, long corner, we want to hug the inside all the way around and pick up the throttle sort of in the middle of the corner. And also I'm holding the brakes again, even though I'm right foot braking, all the way into the very last possible moment, just to keep the car nice and tight and keep the front end loaded up. So on the exit I've picked up the throttle quickly, but then I'm hesitating for quite a while before finally committing to full throttle, because when I'm cornering in such a tight corner, the rears are heavily traction limited. So opening the car up and then finally committing to full throttle and using all of the track on the exit, of course, as well. Just being conscious of trying to not drop wheels onto the grass there, and towards the first corner again for the next lap. You can find all setups, replays and telemetry for your own use and analysis on virtualracingschool.com, where you can also book one-on-one tuition with world champions from the likes of Anderson Sport. Good luck for this week, and feel free to post any questions or comments below. Thanks for watching.